in the NBA Finals. They started saying you were going to get Finals MVP for a second, man.
I play well, but Steph is...
Hey, it's been more than a minute since I've uploaded, but I'll be on here uploading this season. I wanted the comeback video to be this one, and it's about 5 players and how they played before and after teaming up with Steph Curry. Remember about 12 years ago, Harrison Barnes was considered the top high school player in the country. He was looked at as a future star player because of how athletic he was. He was 6'8", he could put the ball on the floor. That's the archetype for superstars in the NBA. But by the time he's in the middle of his freshman year at North Carolina, you're saying to yourself, wait, what? I'm not seeing the superstar wing everyone said he was when he was coming in. It was inconsistent. It was kind of like the Andrew Wiggins situation before Wiggins, where he's not on every night. Getting drafted to the Warriors was perfect for him because it's a team on the rise with veterans, and it would simplify his role. How many guys have we seen get drafted in the lottery and they're just not ready to fill in as the face of a franchise on and off the court, and they never really recover? But with Golden State, he didn't have to worry about that. You can look at the numbers and see how Steph opened up things for him in his rookie year. In the minutes he was on the court in the 2013 playoffs with Steph Curry, he had a true shooting percentage of 57, which is pretty good. But in the minutes Steph was off the court, Barnes' true shooting percentage dropped to 39, which is well below the league average. And it makes sense, he's playing against the 57-win Denver Nuggets and the Spurs. This isn't some January regular season game against some random team. Over the next few years, he became a solid defender, one of the better rebounders at the small forward spot, and was also one of the better corner three-point shooters in the league in 2015 and 2016, and it was wild because Barnes entered the league as mostly unreliable from behind the three-point line. One of the crazier things about the Warriors between the 2014 and 2016 seasons is that their star players and role players made either marginal improvements or massive improvements. You don't ever see that, pretty much like 7 players making improvements, which is part of why they were so good together. Now, why did the Harrison Barnes era in Golden State come to an end in 2016? Well, if Kevin Durant wants to join the team, you're definitely gone. It doesn't matter who you are, but when you almost single-handedly give an NBA Finals to the other team, it's pretty easy to say bye. In the last 3 games of the 2016 Finals to win a championship against Cleveland, Barnes shot 5 of 32 from the field, and if you remember that series, you know at least like half of those shots were completely wide open. The Cavs were selling out hard on Steph and saying, Harrison Barnes, you have to beat us. Fast forward a few weeks later, and Barnes signed with the Dallas Mavericks that summer in free agency, and immediately his offensive role changed to what would have had been his role had he gotten drafted to a worse team. He was still a combo forward like he was in Golden State, but he became the first or second most important offensive player depending on the night in Dallas. He was back to what he was when he was coming into the league. In his first year, he led the Mavs in points, shot attempts, was getting to the free throw line at a career high rate, was operating in the pick and roll as a ball handler more than ever, which is kind of nuts when you look back at it. And today with the Kings, Barnes is still pretty much the same as a player, wildly inconsistent. He has nights where I see Kings fans say, hey, maybe we should re-sign him, and then he has nights where he's actively harming their chances of winning. Guy's been in trade rumors for years because he can help other teams as a 3 or a 4, so we'll see what happens with him. I think most people said that if there's any place where Andrew Wiggins is going to rewrite his career in his mid-20s, it would be with the Golden State Warriors, because if he can't make it work in a system where role players have had the easiest jobs of their lives playing off of Steph Curry, then Wiggins is pretty much done as an impact starter in the league. We know the Andrew Wiggins story. He was one of the most hyped prospects of the last 20 years because of his athleticism and two-way potential. He was the #1 pick in the 2015 draft, but after a handful of seasons, became one of the worst contracts in the league and was one of the faces of draft disappointments. Now a few years later, after being traded from the Minnesota Timberwolves, he's having games where he's scoring 27 points and playing elite defense in a Western Conference Finals game on the road, and then 2 weeks later, he's bringing down 16 rebounds in an NBA Finals game on the road and playing his best in games that actually matter. It's still wild seeing him play like this because you wondered if he would ever be an actual impact player in the NBA in Minnesota. The secondary wing next to an established star was always his best role, not the guy who leads your franchise for a decade. It's only been about a quarter of the season so far, but you can see it just from the stats. Never in his career has Andrew Wiggins shot above 40% from 3 and 50% from the field over a season. Every year in Golden State has been a career best in field goal percentage and three-point percentage. He's getting in-rhythm catch-and-shoot threes and easy dribble drives because Steph is opening up space with and without the ball. 73% of Wiggins' made shots this year have been assisted. He did more creating on his own in Minnesota. The entire league is always looking for 6'6" to 6'8" wing players that can shoot, attack a closeout, defend in isolation, switch or fight over screens, and the Warriors basically got him with no resistance from other teams. Nobody in 2019 was saying, oh yeah, you know what, let's buy low on Andrew Wiggins, because it didn't make sense for them because of his huge contract. Credit to Wiggins obviously for being able to do it, because his style of play was not like this with Minnesota, but if you have a jumper, some finesse when finding driving angles, and the timing of when you gotta move to open space when chaos is happening, you can do really well next to Steph. Other than winning a championship, what hadn't KD accomplished as an individual player in OKC before joining Golden State? He pretty much did everything you want as a guy who's the face of a franchise. KD and Steph dominated together. You can see it in their tracking stats on NBA.com. Over 12 games in the 2019 playoffs, KD had a 70% true shooting percentage with Steph on the court. With Steph off the court in those playoffs, it dropped to 58%. And in their first year together during the regular season in 2017, KD's shooting percentage with Steph off the court was 61%, and when they were on the court together, it jumped up to 67%. Either way, those are great numbers, but you can see the difference when Steph's on the court with KD. KD knew this was going to happen, which is part of why he left. It was comical how many clean looks and one-on-one shots he was able to get up in situations where he was usually double-teamed in the past. Now, I can point to this stat or this lineup or how KD had a better field goal percentage with Steph in this stretch. Durant is going to have great percentages wherever he's at. They're amazing in Brooklyn. He's carrying a Nets roster that's really not that great. But what I think KD misses playing with Steph the most is the on and off court stability. He is not getting that with the Nets. Harden wanted out. Kyrie, like my upload schedule, is not reliable. Steve Nash was a rookie coach and got fired. Let's just say KD decides to stay in Golden State. Even if it's Steph, KD, and a bunch of flawed role players, we've seen superstars mask the flaws of mediocre teams, and the Warriors spend money like crazy, so it's not like they wouldn't have tried to get other guys to help out. It's just been a weird stretch for him since he left the Warriors, and when people are talking about his career after he retires, you're going to look at these years kind of strange. You're going to look at him leaving the Warriors in the Nets era and just ask, wait, what happened here? Wait, he wanted this guy gone and now he's trying to get on another playoff team in the summer. And obviously things happened with the Nets that were completely out of his control. But in 10 years, some of these choices he made with the Nets are not going to age well. I really don't want to get into the is he a leader or is he a not debate, but I 100% agree with the line of thinking that KD at this stage of his career is most effective on a team with an established system and culture. That's part of why the Warriors were embarrassing everyone, and that's why he was looking at Phoenix as his next team a few months ago. You're going into a situation with Booker, CP3, and Monty Williams. He can just hoop and play off them, and a lot of the times be the main guy creating everything on offense. When you're talking about the Golden State Warriors dynasty era in a vacuum, Andrew Bogut is not going to be one of the first players talked about. He just isn't. It's like that bar graph meme when they're talking about a player with a lot of talent and production, but they're kind of a footnote. Steph Curry getting drafted is where you start the story, but what also needs to be mentioned is the year 2012 when the Warriors traded Monte Ellis to Milwaukee for Andrew Bogut. Bogut was a 7-foot center that could be the back line of your defense. It's kind of simple. Being that tall and 250 pounds while being able to move your feet well gives you a serious advantage over players in the paint. He was also one of the better big man passers in the league. He can make passes out of the post and from the elbow. He made an All-NBA team with Milwaukee. This was the perfect trade for the Warriors because it gave their starting lineup balance, and now instead of giving up 110 points every night, the Warriors immediately became one of the better defensive teams in the league because of Bogut's rim protection and positioning. The Warriors' defense had been historically bad for years, and Bogut changed that. Remember, this was before Clay and Draymond became the defenders we know them as. This was before they got Iguodala. Bogut was really carrying the defense at the time. In Milwaukee, Bogut was more of a focal point on offense. He was taking the third most shots on the team at one point. But with the Golden State, his role on offense changed, and he was not taking that many shots, obviously. When you have Steph and other guys, he was setting more screens, catching roll passes, and making passes from the elbow. Bogut was just so important for those playoff runs, and he helped them win a title in 2015. They don't beat the 57-win Nuggets in the 2013 playoffs without him, and maybe they actually win the title in 2016 if he doesn't get injured, but that's part of his story. Bogut dealt with a lot of injuries, and the Warriors ended up finding their Draymond at center lineup, which pushed Bogut out of the lineup, and eventually he was traded to the Mavs and moved around the league after that because of those same injuries. Obviously, Steph, Clay, Draymond, those are the guys you start with, but when you're talking about those early Warriors years, you gotta mention Andrew Bogut, who was a big part of that as well. When D'Angelo Russell was traded to the Golden State Warriors in the summer of 2019, it was easy to imagine Steph and D'Angelo playing together offensively on paper. We know they can both play as the main ball handler, move without the ball, or be a catch and shoot guy. Before that season even started, Steph and D'Lo were already talking about whoever is closest to the rebound, or if one of them gets the rebound, then the other one will start off the ball. They just lost Kevin Durant in free agency, lost Klay Thompson due to injury, and they needed more perimeter scoring, or it would have been a lost Steph season. D'Lo was just coming off a season making the All-Star game and being the best player on a playoff team. Not a great playoff team, but still a playoff team. Steph hadn't played with a guard with a skill set sort of like Russell since probably the Monte Ellis years. But most of that shared ball handling stuff was just talk because they only played 4 games together in 2019. Curry broke his hand in the first couple of games and sat out the rest of the year. We did see Russell's usage drop in those 4 games though. He was taking 19 shots per game with the Nets the year before, then in the 4 games with Steph, it dropped to 15 shots a night, then it jumped back up to 20 when Steph was out with injury. He was pretty much by himself as the only real offensive player as the Warriors would go on to have one of the worst records in the league. After all those injuries and not seeing Klay, Steph, and D'Lo play together, there's no point in keeping Russell. It was time to move on. You might as well get something from him in a trade, and that's exactly what happened. He was traded to Minnesota after being with Golden State for 7 months, and funny enough with Minnesota, he is in more of an off-ball role. Today, D'Angelo is just kind of another starting guard in the league, which is kind of wild when you consider what he was thought to be when he was drafted and looking back at his season with the Nets. It's probably one of the worst years of his career. He is only taking about 12 shots a game, which is about as many as he took during Kobe's last year in the league. He's having to adjust next to Gobert, Towns, and Edwards. Really awkward situation over there. Not every player has flourished next to Steph, obviously. How many frontcourt players did the Warriors try to bring in the last 5 years, and it just did not work out at all? Considering which types of big men have done well with the Warriors, it's not really shocking that James Wiseman hasn't done anything so far. And that's it for me, man. Wanted to come back with a more of a general topic video. Again, it's been more than a minute, but I'll be on here uploading this season about the games. Checking with you guys in the next one.